Hey, Neil McDonnell here. We're going to get started in just a split second. I'm going to make sure my whole video is going good. I'm excited to continue this week's live theme of basically cold calling, right? Cold meetings, cold calling. This idea of how do you warm them up before you go along, or how do you make sure you're prepared? That's the theme of this week. And it drives into business development and capture within the federal government. So that's exciting for me. Do me a favor, as we go along, I've got to just make sure I'm good to go. We are. So I'm going to dive into my topic. First thing I got to do is turn this little guy off on the bottom because I tend to just forget about it accidentally. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Neil McDonnell, president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I welcome you to my daily LinkedIn Lives where I discuss process and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been really focusing on helping people like you understand that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. And when that process is followed, you go from A to Z and achieve the results or the success that you want, right? So the process is just a plan, and the outcome is what you get when you follow that process. Appreciate the audio visual check. We're going to keep diving in. Today, we're going to talk about, as I already mentioned, warming up relationships before the meetings and before going into a meeting. So you can think about this of warming up, not just the cold call before maybe you're trying to reach out to somebody to schedule a meeting, but also how do you warm up that person before going in to meet them if you've never met them before and haven't had a chance to build a relationship, right? So I'm going to try to keep today's training around this idea of warming up the relationship. And if you've been in my other trainings before, you know I do a fire hose approach where I just come at you and I try to get as much as I can in this 30-minute window. Before I get started, though, I want you to help buyers and me and really other people in the community remember who you are, and in particular, remember your company and your core competency. So please, in the chat, put your company name and your core competency in 2 or 3 words so that it helps us remember who you are. I put in, by the way, a comment early on. I don't know if you could see it coming on, but I tried to jump into the chat beforehand and put in a link to a post I did today. And it's a post about a poll. So speaking about warming up relationships, it begins with just being engaged out there. So after you're done with this, go take a look at that poll and let me know what your vote is for the most friendly department out of the 4 that I put there. And then also tag small business professionals who you might think that everybody else should be paying attention to because they're so great. There's a handful of people out there already mentioning, and there's a lot of voting going on, but it's an exciting place to be part of the dialogue and to increase your visibility. And that kind of leads me into getting started with turning a cold meeting into a warm meeting for federal sales. The 3 things I want to talk to you about, right? First, I just want to go over what do I mean when I say cold and warm. The next is I want to talk about things you can do before you schedule a meeting with somebody you want to meet with that you can warm that relationship up. And then after you schedule that meeting, the third thing I want to talk about is what are some things that you can do that will warm up that relationship even more, right? Or if you didn't do the first part, you can still do the second part. So I just talked about that post where people are in there voting which agency is most small business friendly. And the reason I'm pushing you there is because it's engagement. It's where people will see who you are, especially if you go in and make a comment and tag some small business professional that you think is great. Well, you'll be in the dialogue, and people do business with those they know, like, and trust. That's an example of getting people to know you, right? Like and trust comes with a little bit more effort, but knowing really is just about showing up, right? If we do business with those we know, like, and trust, I can't possibly know you if you don't show up in my radar, right? In my eyesight. And so when you do show up, you're starting that path, that journey to getting the other person to know you. And so as you move forward, everything I'm suggesting here is about knowing, liking, and trusting, that knowing part in particular. And maybe a little bit of the trust. The like will come when they meet with you, right? I think a like takes a little bit more one-on-one. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be virtual. It could be a phone call, and they begin to like you because, hey, it was great. But knowing and trusting, you can do that virtually. They can trust your expertise by reading what you write or watching the training videos you might do and go, that person knows what they're doing. the difference between a cold and warm call is huge, right? The reason I want to tell you this is because one of my favorite lines is, the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. The biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it took place at all. So I'm assuming, if I just move on, that you know the difference between a cold and a warm call. I'd rather assume you don't. I'd rather just take a second and talk about what that really means. So a cold call, whether it's a cold meeting or a cold phone call to try to set up a meeting, a cold relationship is one where they don't know you, right? You know what this is like when a salesperson calls you, or anybody randomly, right? The person from the volunteer fire department is seeking funds. When they call in, that's pure cold calling. I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. All my barriers are coming up to prevent me from getting hurt, right? I want to feel in control of my situation. You really can't hurt me on the phone, but even there, I have this protection mode that we all feel. And so when you're talking to somebody and it's cold, you have to fight through all these barriers. You have to climb walls, go around walls, dig under walls, or try to bash right through the walls. Whatever that is, it's not as good or as easy as if there was no wall at all. And you could just say, oh, hi, John, I'm Neil, right? And so a warm call or a warm meeting is one where they know you. I know who you are. I know what you do. I don't quite know if I want to work with you yet, but I no longer have hesitation talking with you, talking to you and with you, because I've taken the time to get to know you, or more importantly, you have taken the time to get them to know you, right? You've done some of these tips I'm going to suggest, you've done these and they've begun to know who you are. So that's a big deal. The last thing I want to talk about, just from an overall understanding, is that everything in today's topic and really all this week, it's about marketing. In sales, you've got marketing and sales, or in the federal government, we call it business development, capture and proposal. All of that is sales. This part here, in particular in business development, right? Capture, yes, a little bit, but it really is in business development, because business development, there's no sense of urgency. If you've ever seen the 4 quadrants I talk about, where it's important or not important, it's urgent or not urgent. Well, business development is in the important but not urgent, right? We're looking out 12 to 24 months out there. Capture tends to be a little bit more urgent because there's a deadline on that RFP. Even if it hasn't dropped yet, we know it's going to drop and it's going to be due in 3 months, 6, 12 months, whatever. So there's a sense of urgency that happens a little bit more in capture than it does in business development. And so in business development is where you're going to do a lot of these type of calls. And when you do them properly, you'll have established relationships that will feed into your capture activities. So there's this number that people throw out, and it changes all the time, and I change mine all the time. But basically, it's marketing engagements or touches, right? You need to have 6 to 10 touches in today's training before they know you. Right? Somehow you have to come on their radar 6 to 10 times before they know you. Now, you could do it with 1, or it might take 15, but 6 to 10 is a good average thing. And what that means is you want to take the time to be making sure that if you want to meet with John, who's the director of IT over in the Army, right, that you're going to find out who John is and find out how you can do market engagements or touches with that customer, or that lead, really is what that person is. And so you might try various ways, right? You might try a direct mail, or you could send a postcard to them. You could send them an email. You could do LinkedIn, which I'm about to talk about. You could just be on the web. There's all these things you can do. Some of them, you know that John will see you, and some of them you hope that they will see you. But 6 to 10 times where you pop up on their radar, and you'll be able to get them to know who you are. And that's our goal. So let's move on to, what do you do before scheduling a meeting? Because there's things you can do if you know that, like I'm going to be working in the next month on some SharePoint activity within the Navy. And I've talked a lot about SharePoint in past posts that I put on LinkedIn, SharePoint in the Navy, but now I'm going to do this concerted effort. But I'm not in a hurry to talk with them, and I'm in a hurry to get started. So I'm going to put together this list of SharePoint people in the Navy, and I'm going to begin to get them to know me, get visibility with them, in order for me to then know that I'm going to have a warm meeting. When I ask for the meeting, it's going to be warmed up. So an example of how I can do this is in LinkedIn. And I really want to drive home 3 different examples of getting them to know you. And the last one's pretty straightforward. But the first path that you can do on getting somebody to know you and for you to get to know them better is LinkedIn. And here's I'm going to give you the steps in here. Actually, if you'd like a handout that I can put together of the steps I'm talking about, go ahead and put in cold to warm checklist, please, in the comments, and I'll come back and get that to you. But so the first thing is LinkedIn. You want to view somebody's profile. If I'm looking at John, let's just use John, the director of IT, and they do SharePoint. I want to set up a meeting with John. I can view John's profile. And when I view their profile, 2 things happen. First thing is they will become aware, if they're active on LinkedIn, that I'm seeing them, because we can look in and see who's viewed our profile. Some people do that, some don't, and that's okay. But the other thing that it allows me to do is I can begin to understand John as a person, not just as the director of IT, but what's his past experience? Where did he go to school? What are some of his certifications? Do I have similar certifications? Any of these kind of activities. And then speaking of activities, I can see what he shares on LinkedIn. Is he sharing articles or posts out there with content that he thinks important? Is he resharing other people's content that gives me a little insight into what John is thinking is important? So he might share something from somebody else in the Army or from industry, like from Microsoft, say, hey, this is a great Office 365 update that they're talking about. Well, now I understand a little bit where he's at. And I can also look at what he's liking. So I talk about what content he might be posting. But another thing I can do when I view his profile is I can see, what is John engaged in? What's he giving a thumbs up to? What is he commenting on? And by seeing those things, I can begin to become aware of who he is and what's important to him as it relates to being on LinkedIn. So the second step is following John. So it's a very visible step to follow somebody on LinkedIn. It's not a bad thing. It's completely a normal business thing. But you go into LinkedIn and instead of connecting with somebody, you follow them. And when you follow them, 2 big things happen again. One is LinkedIn will be notifying John that Neil just followed you, right? So before, when I viewed them, he has to be looking at who's viewed my profile to see that. That's a very low level way of maybe getting on his radar. But when I click the follow button, now he is notified inside of LinkedIn in the notification area that Neil is following. And if John's the type of person who's not getting a lot of updates, then he will see it and it'll be very visible. Boom, I'm on his radar, right? And there inside of that, when I follow, there's one other thing you'll want to do is you can click the bell notification. And when you do that, anything John says, I'll be notified about it. So that's his activity that I talked about a minute ago. So you can view his profile, you can follow. The next thing that I can do that begins to warm up this relationship with John steadily is I can like posts that he creates, right? I'm not really trying to engage with other posts that are out there that maybe he's engaging with, but I can look into content he's sharing. And if he's sharing it and it's relevant to me and I like it, I can give it a thumbs up. You can decide what you want to give or don't give, but here's the reality. Some people like Hondo Gertz, who used to be in the Navy as a undersecretary of acquisition or whatever, that guy puts something out and gets like 100+ likes. But most of us don't get that many likes, right? Most of us don't get that many engagements. And so when we take the time to put content out and we see somebody gives it a thumbs up, we absolutely go in and look at that, right? We might get notified that John might get notified Neil gave you a thumbs up, but sometimes it might be, hey, you got 5 thumbs up or, likes or claps or whatever. And so he's not really seeing me, but we go in and we look at that. So by giving a thumbs up, you're on his radar if he's curious enough to see who's engaging his content. That's a low level of engagement. The next level of engagement is you can repost, not share. There's a big difference here. Repost his content to your feed. And really, if you're looking at a post and you like it and you think it's valuable to your connections, you go down where it says share. And when you share with no comment, it reposts his post onto your feed. And the reason that's important is because it allows John to keep getting engagement on his post. If you reshare it or if you share it, you separate it. Now there's 2 posts on LinkedIn and his stops getting credit for any of your connections. It's a bigger LinkedIn tip, but repost. Don't comment on it. Just don't comment when you share it. But when you do that, John will know. And then the last engagement you can do is commenting on the content that John is putting out there. So an example is John puts an article out and says, hey, here's the new strategic plan for the IT department in the Army. Or John writes an article saying, this is why I think DevSecOps is really important to the Army's future or something. When you look at that, if John's your target and you're trying to sell, I would read that and then commenting back. This is called engagement at the deepest level in LinkedIn, is we're continuing the conversation. That's why LinkedIn exists in this way, is they want more of us to be talking. And so if we go in and comment on John's stuff, a couple of big things happen. One is John is seeing us as an expert. We're not just saying, hey, love your article, thanks for posting it. That's really not worth it. It's not horrible that you do it, but it's not really any good for you. But if you look at that and say, hey, John, thanks for posting it. I especially like section 5 where it talks about this goal, because that ties really into some challenges I see for industry as a whole. Whatever it is, you never, ever sell. You're engaging in the dialogue. But when you do that, John will see it. And there's 3 things that I think are hugely valuable. One is John will see it. Neil commented on your post, John. The second thing is John might engage it himself. And if he engages it himself, I am one step closer to him knowing me, like really going, oh, I know who that Neil guy is. Doesn't mean he likes and trusts me. Just, I know him. He's engaging in my content. If he asks for a meeting, I might take it, right? I'm that much closer if he comments on my comment. And again, that's the whole point of social media. We're trying to engage back and forth. The third thing that is a benefit from you commenting on, or me commenting on John's post, is those other people who come in and look at John's post, the people who give it a thumbs up and they're looking at it, they'll see and read the comments, especially if there's only a couple of them. They'll look and say, well, what are people saying? Is there something I might want to reply on the comments that I see? And so that's a way for you to get visibility out there and help drive a little bit of engagement on John's post. And so people appreciate that. So coming back, these LinkedIn tips that I just talked about, they're all designed to drive forward on getting John, right, in this case, to know me. I want him to know me before I even call to set up a meeting. So here's something I want you to do when I take a sip of water is in the chat, tell me whether you use LinkedIn for marketing the way I described, yes or no. So but also which agency do you use it at? So put in something like Army LinkedIn yes or Army LinkedIn no. Just let me know. I'm curious on what's going on. Also, I'm thirsty. I see the comments about getting the checklist. I'll definitely get that to you as soon as I can. Okay, so the next thing on that you can do before you're scheduling the meeting is use Google, right? I know this seems really fundamental, but before I even try to schedule a meeting with John, I can go Google search him everywhere. And so I want to look into the Department of Defense to see if there's videos he's done. I want to look throughout industry. Did he go talk at AFCEA or the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, right? Has he done podcasts? I want to find him anywhere out there. And if I can find, first off, it's really important for me to learn, do my homework. But the second is I might be able to engage that piece of content that I see out there on the internet outside of LinkedIn. So if I see a podcast, generally you have the ability to comment. I can comment on that. It also might lead to this idea of you could, message John and say, hey, I just listened to your podcast. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Right? If I'm going on a long plan and I'm trying to knock on John's door, I'm not looking to schedule a meeting in the next week or two. I'm actually looking at a month. And if I do this every day, by the way, at some point I'll be having meetings that, I've been working people for a month and it's moving forward. And so I can schedule meetings every day for the people I started 30 days ago or even 60 days ago, right? I don't want to reach out to people until I know that I've warmed them up, unless it's an emergency, right? From a capture standpoint or something. I really want to get them to know me. So Google is a great way to do this. And I have found so much information about people I've gone to meet. On here is DK, who it's great having him on because he's former government contracting officer in the acquisition side. And sometimes it's a yin and yang of what I'm saying, but it's that exact same thing, right? It's this engagement and doing our homework that they appreciate. So the last thing that I do to warm something up, and this is just a tip I use for how I, by the way, I'm out at Nav Air, so I don't know if you can hear it, but I got fighter jets flying over my ears. So if it's disturbing you, I apologize, but I'll just keep talking. So when you go to schedule a meeting, I've got John, he knows who I am. I want to schedule a meeting. The way that I do it, and I have a whole other training session that goes into how I do this in depth, but I call and I leave a voicemail. I use a voicemail script, but I call and I leave a voicemail. I almost always get the voicemail. If I don't, I talk to them directly, but I'm trying to schedule a meeting. And so I'm calling saying, John, this is Neil McDonnell. I'm trying to set up a meeting, an introduction meeting, trying to find a good time, et cetera. I have a whole script for that. But the reason I'm saying this is I'm warming it up one last time with John by leaving a voicemail. And then 2 hours later is my strategy. I send an email saying, hey, I called you and left a voicemail. Just want to follow up with an email, trying to get on your calendar at your convenience, blah, blah, blah. But those two things, when I do it, they're designed to be two additional warming up of that person. So I've been doing all this LinkedIn stuff, but then also I'm going into this idea of when they can hear me talk in a voicemail before they ever actually talk to me, when they see a polite professional email, these are two things that help them go, well, it seems like he's nice enough and professional and respectful, right? And so those two things are tools not only to schedule a meeting, but also to begin to warm that relationship up. You would be surprised on how many people reach out to the government buyer, large primes, whoever it is, almost demanding something from them. And so if you go in polite and professional, you'll be a breath of fresh air to them. So, okay, just tracking my time. The last thing is after scheduling the meeting, I did a voicemail, I did an email. John and I either traded emails and coordinated a meeting, or we talked on the phone and picked a time and set a date. I haven't sent an invite yet, right? We've just agreed to, hey, next Tuesday, 4:00, or usually I try to push it out at least 7 days to give me good prep time. But so we've got it next Tuesday, 4:00, we're going to meet. That's all that's there. So the very first thing I do after agreeing to schedule the meeting and to have the meeting is I send a thank you, right? These are touches. I talk about this in another training I did and a handout that I had like 30 touches or something. This idea of, you send a thank you. John, thanks so much for agreeing to meet next Tuesday at 4:00. I'll send over a calendar invite shortly, right? So I send an email. I might wait 30 minutes and then I send a calendar invite. Now I'm engaging them twice, right? In sales and in marketing like this, that is a great idea. Somebody else might have comments about it, but when I do that, I've thanked them for giving me the meeting. And then the calendar invite is scheduling the meeting. And this is why it's important. When they accept the calendar invite, it goes away. It's out of their inbox. They don't really see it anymore. It's on their calendar. So that's not a lingering marketing touch, if you will. And I want a lingering marketing touch. That email that I sent that thanks them is the last thing currently in their inbox from me. Hey, John, thanks a lot for the meeting, scheduling the meeting. People don't do that often enough. We don't say, please, thank you, and you're welcome enough. And John will appreciate the fact that I thanked them for the meeting. And then, like I said, 30 minutes later or so, I send the calendar invite. In the calendar invite, something to keep in mind is it should have a purpose statement. It's a separate training that I talk about actually later this week. But the purpose statement will be one of the first things when John's accepting the calendar invite. He sees that it's Teams meeting, let's say, and the purpose is this. You're starting to establish the control and the direction of the meeting in the way that you would like it to go, right? If John's got objectives and goals, he can share them, but you're getting it in the calendar invite so people see it. Most of us don't use that. I don't know why. It's a great little piece of real estate for marketing. Okay, the next thing is you sent the calendar invite. You want to next send a confirmation that you sent the invite. So remember that I sent the thank you. If I'm lucky, he calls back and says, no problem, looking forward to meeting you, or something like that, right? But I send the calendar invite, and maybe the next morning I just reply back and say, hey, got it on the calendar, especially if he hasn't responded, accepted, right? I know he's going to be there, but if he hasn't clicked accept and send a reply back to Neil, well, I want to send a confirmation email that I sent the invite. So, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting with you again. Thank you. And I sent the calendar invite. You should have it in your inbox. And it's just driving forward that one, I want to do marketing engagement. And two, I want to make sure you put that on your calendar, John, because I spent a while trying to get this meeting. I'd like to make sure it sticks. The last two tips I have for you is as you move forward closer to the meeting date, you want to reach out, let's say 5 business days, and ask for a strategic document, strategic plan, or for a recent industry day slides, things like that. So if I'm looking at John in the IT department, they surely have done some sort of industry briefing or some sort of briefing throughout the last year. Make sure you look on Google and you do your internet research. Look on their website, look on Google, et cetera, and see if you can find any of the stuff. But if you can't, I'm going to reach out to John and say, hey, John, I want to do my homework and make sure I'm most prepared for the meeting. Do you happen to have any strategic plan from this year that I should be paying attention to? Or better yet, do you have an industry day that you guys have done in the last 12 months? I might be able to look at the slides. And either thing is fine on how he replies. Yeah, here they are. Great, thanks. Or no, sorry, I don't know what, I don't have any of those. That's fine. I'll look at your website. I'll make sure I'm coming in prepared. But I've engaged John again, and in a way that John goes, wow, this person's coming in prepared, right? It's nothing special about me. It's all of us when we follow a process and we're prepared. So all of us can make our Johns happy, any person we're meeting with. Let me just check my time on this thing really quick. Okay, good. And the last tip is 2 to 3 days out, usually 48 hours out, business hours. You want to send your capability statement. I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't sent it. I keep it to myself. If John asks for it, what I say is, hey, I actually want to tweak it a little bit so it's fits right for your agency and you. Can I send it to you when that's ready? Sure, sounds good. He doesn't really care. He's going to look at it. It should take him 6 seconds or a few minutes to look at it and really absorb it. So as long as you get it to him 2 days before, but by sending it 2 days before, you're refreshing your company and yourself in John's memory or mind. And also you're warming it up because John's looking at, okay, I'm meeting with Neil. This is what they do. It's SharePoint, it's migrations. Yeah, we got some of those projects. And I might even, when I send the capability statement, ask if there's, as we come forward, are there particular challenges I might be trying to discuss? Anyways, long story short, because I'm running out of time here, make sure when you're sending, when you're preparing to schedule a meeting or you've scheduled it and you haven't gone in yet, make sure you're doing things to keep warming up that relationship and that person so that when you get there, they're kind of excited to talk with you about whatever the purpose is you've established. If you're meeting with John, the IT director, we're going to talk about IT, and he will have seen that my company or I have some chops in that space and that he's looking forward to talk with me. Maybe he can learn some. He's happy to share some. Okay, so again, if you want the checklist of these tips I've talked about, put cold to warm checklist, please, in the chat, and I will get it to you. So today we talked about warming up relationships. Tomorrow, I'm going to continue this whole theme, and we'll be talking about preparing for that sales call. You've done all the work to make sure it's warm, so let's make sure we're preparing to actually have a successful meeting. If you like today's topic, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for joining me today. Again, remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you at the next event.